Books made my English better than any course. Welcome to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like English classes don't really help? You go to class, you do the exercises, but you still can't speak, right? That was me too. I spent months in courses. I passed the tests, but when I opened my mouth, nothing. Everything changed when I picked up a book, one simple book. It spoke to me in a way no teacher ever did, and from that day, my English began to grow, slowly, deeply, for real. So stay with me. Let me tell you how books, yes, just books, made my English better than any course. Tell me in the comments, have books helped you more than classes? Chapter 1. The course that didn't work. I still remember the first day of my English course. I walked into the classroom with hope. I thought, maybe this will help me speak. Maybe this is the thing I need. The room was full of students like me. Some were excited, some were quiet. I sat in the back. I looked at the board. The teacher smiled. She wrote words in English. She said them aloud. Everyone repeated. I repeated too, but I didn't feel anything. I didn't understand what I was saying. I just copied sounds, like a machine. No feeling, no meaning. Each class was the same. We read dialogues. We filled in the blanks. We circled the right answers. We memorized grammar rules. But when I left the classroom, my brain forgot everything. It was like I never studied at all. I couldn't speak. I couldn't understand native speakers. I couldn't even make one simple sentence in real life. I felt ashamed. I thought, what is wrong with me? My classmates were quiet too. They did their homework, they passed the tests, but none of us could speak English outside class. We knew the rules, but not the language. Sometimes the teacher spoke only in English. She spoke fast. She asked questions. My heart beat fast. I looked down. I didn't want her to call my name. I was afraid to speak. I didn't want to make mistakes. I didn't want people to laugh. The class was full of fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of sounding stupid. I stayed silent. I hoped time would pass quickly. I waited for the bell to ring. And every time I walked out with the same feeling. I'm not getting better. One day, the teacher asked us to write a paragraph. I didn't know what to write. I opened my notebook. I stared at the blank page. My mind was empty. I had learned so many words, but I couldn't make one real sentence. I felt broken. I had spent months in that class. I had paid money. I had followed every instruction, but nothing changed. My English stayed the same, and my confidence went lower and lower. I started thinking, English is just too hard for me. I talked to some of my friends. They felt the same. They also went to courses. Some went to expensive ones. Some even went abroad. But still, they said the same thing. I can read, I can write, but I can't speak. I can't think in English. That made me wonder, why? Why do so many people study English for years but still can't use it? I searched for answers. I watched videos. I read blogs. I even asked a few fluent speakers. And I heard something that hit me deeply. Someone said, English is not something you study. It's something you live. That sentence stayed with me. I kept thinking about it. Something you live. What does that mean? I started to understand. In my class, we studied English like a subject, like math or science. But language is not a subject. It's a life tool. It's for feelings. It's for ideas. It's for real communication. I was learning grammar, but not learning how to feel in English. I knew the past tense, but I couldn't say how I felt yesterday. I knew the future tense, but I couldn't tell someone my dreams. That was the real problem. One evening, I sat alone. I looked at my textbooks. I felt angry, not at the teacher, not at the school, but at the method. It wasn't working. I closed the book. I told myself, there has to be another way. I didn't know what that way was yet, but I was ready to try something new. I was tired of wasting time. I was tired of repeating without meaning. I was tired of pretending to learn. I wanted to feel English. I wanted it to live inside me. And that's when something unexpected happened. A small book changed my life. Chapter 2. The Day I Opened a Book. It was a quiet afternoon. I had no class that day. I felt tired of everything. My English was not improving. My confidence was low. I looked at my textbooks and felt nothing, just pages and pages of rules. I put them aside. I needed a break. I walked to the library near my house, not for English, just to sit in a quiet place. I walked past many shelves. Then I saw something, a small book. The cover was simple. It had a picture of a boy and a fox. It said, "The Little Prince." I picked it up without thinking. I sat down and opened the first page. The words were easy. The sentences were short. I read slowly, one line, then the next. At first, I did not understand everything, but I kept reading. I could guess some meanings. I felt something. The story was soft. It was gentle. It was not like my course book. This book was talking to me. Not teaching me, talking to me. I read one page, then another, then another. I forgot about time. I did not stop to check the grammar. I did not worry about tenses. I just read. I followed the story. I felt the sadness, the joy, the wonder. The boy in the book asked deep questions. He made me think. He made me feel. And I was doing it all in English. I couldn't believe it. My brain was learning without pressure. I smiled. I read some lines again. I read them out loud. I liked the way the words sounded. They felt beautiful. When I went home, I couldn't stop thinking about the story. I thought about the boy, the rose, the fox. I remembered the words I had read. And here is the surprise. Those words stayed in my head. I didn't forget them. Not like in the classroom. These words were part of something meaningful, a real story, a human story. That's why I remembered them, because they were not just words, they were feelings. I realized something that day. I had found a different way to learn English, not by force, not by fear, but by feeling. The next day, I went back to the library. I picked up the same book. This time, I brought a notebook. I wrote down the lines I loved. I repeated them. I copied them.
I said them out loud. It felt like music. I didn't know it yet, but I was shadowing. I was training my brain to think in English just by following a small story. That book became my first real teacher. And it didn't even speak. It just waited for me to open it. I remember a moment in the book. The boy asked, "What is essential is invisible to the eye." I read it again and again. The words were deep, and I understood them in English. I felt proud. I felt connected. No class ever gave me that feeling. That's when I knew this was the way. Books were not just for fun. They were doors to another world, and I was ready to open more. After finishing that first book, I felt hungry for more. I wanted to read more stories. Not big novels, just small ones, simple ones. Stories that made me think. Stories that made me feel. I didn't care if I didn't understand every word. I didn't care if I had to read the same page 10 times. I was enjoying the journey. I was learning in a way that made sense to my heart. That day, something changed in me. I was not just a student anymore. I was a reader, a dreamer, a learner. I was in control now. I didn't need a classroom to grow. I needed curiosity. I needed emotion. I needed a good story. And books gave me all of that. Chapter 3. Reading slowly changed everything. After I finished my first book, I wanted to read more, but this time I made a promise to myself. I said, "Don't rush. Take it slow." I didn't care about reading fast. I didn't care about reading many books. I just wanted to understand. I wanted to feel every line, every word. So I picked another small book. I sat with it every day. I read one page, then I stopped. I read it again, slowly. I whispered the words. I imagined the story in my head. I let the meaning grow inside me. Each time I read the same line, I saw something new. One word felt clearer. One sentence made more sense. The story became deeper. I started to feel connected to the book. It was not just reading, it was living. I became the character. I walked with him. I felt his sadness. I smiled with his joy. And I was doing all this in English. Not from rules, not from grammar books, but from real emotion, from real connection. I started to notice something strange. The words were staying in my brain. I didn't forget them like before. They became part of me. I would be walking on the street and a sentence from the book would come back to me. It was like my brain was replaying the story, again and again. I didn't try to memorize, but I remembered, naturally. And this made me excited. I knew I had found something powerful. Reading slowly was not a waste of time. It was the secret. I had read fast before. In school, we had to finish books quickly. We had to answer questions. But I never remembered those books. I never felt anything. I just read with my eyes, not with my heart. But now, it was different. Every word mattered. I circled words I liked. I underlined the sentences that made me smile. I wrote them in my journal. I repeated them like little songs. Sometimes I closed my eyes and whispered the lines again and again. I didn't just read, I felt the words. There was a story about a girl who lost her way in a forest. She was scared. She cried. But then she found a small bird. The bird showed her the way out. It was a short story, but I read it 10 times. I couldn't stop. I cried too. Not because of the story only, but because I understood it. In English. Me. I understood the feelings, the fear, the hope. In another language. I felt powerful. I felt proud. I was not just reading. I was changing. Some days I read only one page. That was enough. I didn't feel lazy. I felt smart because I knew I was learning deeply. My brain was growing roots, strong roots, not fast leaves that fall away. I didn't care if other people finished 5 books in a week. I was building something inside me, something real, and no one could take it away.
The more I read slowly, the more confident I became. I started to hear the words in my head. I started to think in English. Little by little. First, it was only when I was reading. Then, it was when I was walking. Then, it was when I was eating. The voice in my head was in English. It was soft, slow, kind. It was like the books were living inside me now. Reading slowly also helped me speak better. I noticed how sentences were made. I copied them. I used them in real life. I didn't say, "I go market." I said, "I'm going to the market." Because I had read it so many times. I had seen how people talked in books. How they asked questions. How they expressed feelings. The more I read, the more I spoke like them. Not like a robot. But like a real person. Now I tell everyone this: don't read fast. Don't rush to finish. One good page is better than 10 empty ones. One sentence that touches your heart is more powerful than a full chapter you forget tomorrow. Read slowly. Feel the story. Let the English grow inside you. It works. It really works. It changed me. And it will change you too. Chapter 4, Books became my teachers. Something changed in my mind. I started to see books in a new way. Before, I thought books were just for reading. Now, I saw them as my teachers. Not like classroom teachers. These teachers were different. They didn't tell me to hurry. They didn't test me. They didn't laugh when I made mistakes. They waited. They spoke in quiet voices. They repeated things gently. They helped me grow without fear. Each time I opened a book, it felt like a door opening. A door to a new place, a new voice, a new way of thinking. I didn't feel nervous. I felt safe. Because books don't judge you. They don't care about your accent. They don't stop you when you read slowly. They just wait. And every time you return, they welcome you again. That made me feel strong. I knew I could learn at my own speed. I remember one sentence from a story. It said, "She walked through the storm and didn't look back." I read it many times. I said it aloud. I even wrote it on paper and stuck it to my wall. That sentence became my friend. It became my power. I felt like it was speaking to me. I didn't get that from any course. But from one sentence, I got courage. Books can do that. I started to listen to how the book spoke. How the characters used words. How they asked questions. How they said, "I'm sorry," or "I understand you," or "that made me happy." These little things taught me more than rules. Because this was real English. Not textbook English. Not fill-in-the-blank English. But living, breathing English. And that was what I needed. Every book I read became a quiet teacher. One taught me how to describe feelings. Another taught me how to ask for help. One taught me how to say goodbye. Another taught me how to say "I miss you." These are not grammar rules. These are real things we say in life. And I was learning them, one line at a time. Some days, I only read one paragraph. But I read it like a student. Like a listener. Like someone ready to learn. I repeated the words. I said them in front of the mirror. I looked into my own eyes and said, "You're learning. You're getting better. You're doing it." I didn't need a certificate. I didn't need a test score. I had something better. I had real progress. I remember the first time I used a line from a book in real life. A friend was sad. I said to him, "Even the darkest night will end, and the sun will rise." He looked at me. He smiled. He asked, "Where did you learn that?" I said, "From a book." That moment made me feel proud. I had taken something from a story and used it in life. That's what real learning is. After that, I didn't just read books, I studied them. But not in a boring way. I studied the rhythm. The feeling. The style. I copied the lines I loved. I used them in my journal. I repeated them in my thoughts. I didn't know it then, but I was training my brain to think in English. Not with force. Not with pressure. But with love. With peace. Books became my classroom. But better. I could sit with a book on my bed. In a park. On the bus. No walls. No rules. Just words and me. Every book gave me something new. A new phrase. A new way to say something. A new emotion. And all of this without a teacher standing in front of me. That was the magic. Now, when people ask me, "How did you learn to speak English so well?" I smile and say, "Books taught me." They think I'm joking. But I'm serious. Books taught me more than any school ever did. Because they taught me to feel the language. To live the language. And to believe in myself. Chapter 5, How I Practiced Speaking Through Reading. At first, reading helped me understand. But slowly, I discovered something even bigger. Reading helped me speak. Yes, books helped me talk. They gave me the words. They gave me the voice. And most importantly, they gave me the courage. I didn't just read with my eyes. I read with my mouth. I read with my heart. I said every line out loud. I repeated the same sentence 5, 10, 20 times. I played with the sound. I listened to myself. I became the voice in the book. I picked short sentences first. Things like, I don't know, she is kind, I feel happy today. I said them like the characters in the story. I imagined their faces. I imagined their feelings. I copied their tone. I copied their emotion. I acted like them. It was fun. It felt like I was in a movie. And slowly, the fear started to go away. The fear of speaking. The fear of making mistakes. Because in my room, with a book in my hand, I was free to try. One day, I stood in front of the mirror. I opened a book. I read one paragraph aloud. I watched my mouth. I watched my face. I paid attention to how I sounded. I tried to say it clearly. I tried to sound natural. I made mistakes, yes. But I didn't stop. I smiled. I laughed. I corrected myself. Then I said it again. This became my daily habit. Just 5 minutes a day. But those 5 minutes changed everything. Books helped me train my tongue. The more I read aloud, the better my mouth felt. English became easier to say. My tongue started to move differently. My lips learned how to shape the words. I didn't even think about it. My mouth just learned. Like magic. But it wasn't magic. It was practice. Quiet, private, powerful practice. The kind that feels small, but makes a big difference. I also started recording my voice. I used my phone. I read a page from a book. Then I listened. At first, I didn't like my voice. It sounded strange. I wanted to delete it. But I didn't. I listened again. I found one mistake. I fixed it. Then I recorded again. This was my own little classroom. No one to judge me. No pressure. Just me, my book, and my voice. Sometimes, I would pick just one sentence from a story. One line that I loved. And I would say it again and again. I would walk around my room, saying it out loud. I would say it while brushing my teeth. I would whisper it while cooking. I would repeat it until it became part of me. Until I could say it without thinking. That's when I realized, this was fluency. Not perfect grammar. Not big words. Just the ability to speak without fear. And you know what? One day, I was talking to a friend. And suddenly, a sentence came out of my mouth. It was from a book I had read. I didn't plan it. I didn't even think. It just came out. Naturally. And it was beautiful. I felt strong. I felt proud. Because I knew, that sentence came from hours of reading, repeating, practicing. All in private. All in silence. But now, it was speaking for me. I always tell people now, don't just read silently. Read out loud. Feel the words. Make them yours. Don't be afraid to sound silly. Don't worry about mistakes. Speaking starts with small sounds. With brave whispers. With quiet practice. And books give you the best material. Real English. Natural rhythm. Emotional language. The kind you need in real life. Reading is not only for the eyes. It's for the ears. It's for the mouth. It's for the heart. When you speak what you read, you begin to believe you can really speak. That's what happened to me. And I believe it can happen to you too. Just open a book. Read it out loud. Again and again. Let it shape your voice. Let it train your brain. Let it teach you how to speak English, without fear. Chapter 6, The Right Books for Beginners Like Me. After I realized that books were helping me more than any class, I started searching for more. But not just any books. I needed the right books. Books that spoke my language, simple, slow, and emotional. Not books full of big words or complicated grammar. I didn't want to feel lost again. I wanted books that held my hand. Books that helped me walk, step by step, without fear. Because at the beginning, even one hard sentence can make you feel small. I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to grow, not give up. I remember the first beginner book I truly loved. It was short. The sentences were easy. But the story made me feel something. I laughed. I cried. I turned the pages with joy. It was a simple story about a child and his grandfather. They went to the market. They shared stories. They learned from each other. It reminded me of my own childhood. I understood the story, not word by word, but feeling by feeling. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was real English learning. After that, I began to look for similar books. I searched online for easy English books or graded readers for beginners. I found books like The Little Prince, Robinson Crusoe, Easy Version, Peter Pan, and short story collections made for English learners. These books became my daily friends. I didn't try to read everything at once. I picked one and stayed with it. One chapter a day. Sometimes, just one page. But I stayed with the story until it stayed inside me. The best books for beginners are the ones that touch your heart. They don't need to be about big things. They can be about small moments. A walk in the park. A cup of tea. A conversation with a friend. When the story is emotional, your brain remembers the words. That's the secret. Emotion helps memory. Feeling helps fluency. That's why simple stories are not weak, they are powerful. They make learning stick. I also learned to choose books by how they felt, not just by how easy they looked. If a book made me feel bored, I didn't read it. Even if the words were easy. Because I knew, if I didn't feel anything, I wouldn't learn anything. But if a book made me laugh, cry, or dream, I kept it. That was the sign. That was the magic. The right book is not the one with simple words. It's the one that speaks to your soul. I made a small shelf in my room. I called it my English corner. I put all my English books there. Every morning, I picked one. I read for 10 minutes. Some days I read more. Some days I read less. But I read every day. These books became part of my life. They were not for study. They were for living. For dreaming. For changing. And here's something beautiful. The more I read, the more I found my own voice. I started writing my thoughts in simple English. I wrote small diary entries. I used the same words I saw in my books. Slowly, those words became my words. The book's voice became my voice. And that's when I knew, books were not just helping me read. They were helping me become an English speaker. If you are a beginner like I was, don't search for the hardest book. Don't try to impress anyone. Just find one book that feels soft. One story that makes you smile. Even if you only understand 50%, it's okay. Read with your heart. Guess the meanings. Feel the flow. That's how real learning happens. Slowly. Gently. Naturally. Now, when someone asks me, which English course should I join? I smile and say, find a good story first. Because that story may teach you more than any class ever can. It may teach you the words you need. The confidence you want. The feeling of being free in English. That's what the right book did for me. And it can do the same for you. Chapter 7, Why Books Beat Any Course. When I look back now, I smile. Because I see how far I have come. I remember the old days, sitting in class, trying to follow, trying to understand. I was tired. I was confused. I didn't feel strong. I thought English was only for smart people. But I was wrong. I wasn't the problem. The method was. The course was too fast. Too flat. Too far from real life. It wanted me to memorize words, but not feel them. It wanted me to pass tests, but not speak from the heart. That's why it didn't work. But then, I found books. And everything changed. Books didn't rush me. They didn't judge me. They didn't give me homework. They gave me space. They gave me stories. They gave me time. They gave me emotion. And most of all, they gave me trust. Trust that I could learn at my own speed. That I could build English inside me, slowly and naturally. Without fear. Without shame. Just me and the words. Just me and the page. And that was enough. With books, I learned the real way people speak. Not textbook language. Not strange, broken dialogues. But real English. Alive English. Emotional English. Books showed me how people feel. How they talk. How they say hello. How they say goodbye. How they express love, pain, hope, and dreams. I copied that. I learned from it. I used it. And it worked. Slowly, my English became soft. Clear. Natural. Courses gave me grammar. Books gave me fluency. Courses gave me marks. Books gave me meaning. Courses made me afraid to make mistakes. Books made me brave. I could repeat one sentence 100 times. I could cry over one line. I could close my eyes and imagine the scene. That is how I learned. Deeply. Through the heart. Not just the head. I don't hate courses. Some are helpful. Some teachers are kind. But for me, books gave me more. They gave me what the classroom couldn't. They gave me a connection. A feeling. A reason to keep going. And when I had no one to practice with, books were always there. Waiting. Patient. Full of stories and wisdom. That's why I say, books beat any course. When I finished my first full book, I felt like I had climbed a mountain. I was proud. I wanted to read more. And I did. One book at a time. One story at a time. No rush. No pressure. And with each book I became stronger. My vocabulary grew. My thinking changed. My fear disappeared. I became someone who could think in English. Speak in English. Even dream in English. If you feel stuck in your learning, if courses have failed you, don't give up. Pick up a book. Any book. A simple story. A short tale. A children's book. A romance. A fairy tale. Anything that touches your heart. And start reading. Slowly. Gently. With love. Do it every day. Just 10 minutes. And watch how your English begins to grow, not just in your head, but in your soul. Now, I speak English with confidence. I listen with joy. I write with peace. And it all began with one small book. That's why I believe this: one book can change your English. One story can change your life. It changed mine. And it can change yours too. If this video touched your heart, please like it so others can find it too. Subscribe for more real English stories. And tell me in the comments, what's the first book you want to read in English? I'll be waiting to hear your story. Let's grow together, one page at a time.